the first episode of Diversity Matters, a fireside chat series hosted by the PRCA APAC Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Committee. I'm Charu Srivastava, chair of the committee and a career communications professional. I'm very excited to have Surekha Raghavan, editor at Campaign Asia Pacific, join us today for this very first episode. Surekha brings with her a unique bird's eye view into the industry, combined with her own passions for diversity and inclusion across the various stakeholders. Welcome, Surekha.
Thanks so much, Charu.
So according to a study by BCG of over 6,000 employees, only 58% of companies in Asia have some form of diversity and inclusion program in place as compared with the global average of 96%. That's almost half. Some studies also suggest that many people in Asia regard diversity and inclusion as a Western concept. So jumping right into it, Surekha, how do you view the state of DEI in the communications industry in APAC, Surekha? Do you think they are unique to the industry and to the region?
So first of all, thanks for having me on. I'm very happy to be the first guest on the debut episode of Diversity Matters. So just to touch on your point about DEI being a Western concept, I think like as much as we shouldn't anglicize the conversation around diversity, I think we can and we should be looking elsewhere in the world and not just the West for lessons if this can result in more progressive and better policies for people. It's funny also, I think that sometimes we argue, especially in Asia, that DEI is a Western concept, but some of these concepts and cultures such as anti-LGBT sentiment, for instance, they were introduced during the Western colonial era. And so it's ironic then sometimes we get some of these senior officials saying that progressive thinking around DEI is a Western concept. So yeah, sometimes I think we just need to move past that thinking. And in the communications industry itself, I think the industry has the benefit of, counseling organizations for the purpose of improving their reputation. That's what they do. That's sort of the bread and butter of what the communications industry does. And part of that is making sure that DEI is a strong value proposition within the company. And so I think the comms industry is quite well aware of the importance and the benefits of implementing DEI in an organization, whether it's their own organization or whether it's their clients. But at the same time, to be a cynic, I think it might be difficult to distinguish whether or not something is being done for optics or something is being done, with genuine purpose. But I think, at least the needle is being moved and at least people are talking about it, which is more than what we can say compared to 10 years ago, right? I mean, we wouldn't be talking about this 10 years ago. So I think that the fact that we're talking about it, that's always a good start, regardless of, the intention behind it, I think.
Yeah, no, I think you touched on some really interesting points about the part of the Western concept. I think a lot of times it's just an easy way out of it by pinning it on the West and saying, that's not our thing to look at, and kind of quickly slicking out of it. So I think it's a really important point that you brought on. And of course, I totally agree that things are moving. Now, how far they've moved, that's the question, and I think that's we need to tackle. And not just that, but then how do we make it move further, which kind of takes me to the next question. And do you think there are existing challenges that are maybe unique to the industry that have been hindering that progress? As you said, like, yes, the needle has moved, but there's a lot more that we can do. So what do you think is that hindrance or that obstacle in the industry, and specifically in APAC, if so?
100%, I think that there's more to be done. I don't think that there will ever be a stage where DEI will reach, a state of perfection. There's always going to be work to be done based on what's going on the ground. And I think, challenges in this region, or at least in Southeast Asia, around DEI, I think still tend to be around race and neurodiversity. I think so much of this has got to do with we have very complicated histories, and it's made talking about some of these things very taboo and a little bit, not quite as not so smooth to talk about. So with race, for instance, I know that me and you, Charu, we've had some very candid conversations off the record about this, but I still notice, people flinching sometimes when I bring up things like white privilege in Asia or Chinese privilege in Singapore. And I think that there are so many systemic issues being faced by minority races in this region. And if we're not talking about them, the communications industry especially, they risk putting out work that's shallow and quite limiting. That's what I think, yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely agree with you. And I think it's heartening that our first episode has features two females of I guess minority races in Singapore. So great job here. That's where we start the whole thing. But I do agree. I mean, I think sometimes the conversations are uncomfortable. In fact, I'm a strong believer that we need to tackle what makes us uncomfortable, because that's usually where the problem lies or has some sort of root in. Because unless we are ready to tackle things like that, then we are just doing superficial kind of surface level optics, as you mentioned earlier on, right? And kind of creating a nice looking system, but then underneath those layers, what's exactly happening there?
Yeah.
But what do you think there's a difference between what's happening or what is being done in agencies and in-house? Because of course the industry in a way is split in those two sections. Do you think there's a difference in there?
I wouldn't want to jump to any conclusions here, but based on my observation, I find that agencies tend to be a little quicker and maybe more agile when it comes to introducing DEI policies in-house, in-house meaning in their own agencies. And I also think that they're more likely to make these changes public. This is just based, from a journalist's point of view and the communications that I'm getting in my inbox. Whereas in-house, I think my assumption is that there's probably a little bit more red tape involved, a little bit more sort of, global alignment if you're an MNC required. And so I think it's a little bit more complicated to bring about change. It's not just one person's remit, right? It's kind of a whole machine that you have to work within. So that's just what I think. But I don't know. I would be curious to hear what you think, I guess, because you work with so many clients on this.
Yeah. I agree with what you said in that way, but I think it's also the nature of the role that comms people play within each side. I mean, of course, as you mentioned, if you're in-house in a corporate, you're part of a much bigger machinery. Many times, yes, as a big brother or the father sitting somewhere else, the headquarters that is kind of dictating the way things are done, which I guess could be both good and bad depending on where the company's roots lie. If you are, let's say, for instance, a Scandinavian country, a company, chances are it's a little bit more progressive in thinking. The policies might be a little bit more forward. But having said that, again, and this goes back to the concept of Western kind of led change. But I think it really depends company to company. The way I see it with this particular situation is as agency folks. I mean, of course, we are for us, it's a core skill set. We are the core people who are in this organization. So as it does happen, the talents within agencies do then progress into in-house most of the times. And with that in mind, I think it's more of an impotence on the agency sides to kind of instill those practices, those thinking within the mindset, because I'm a big believer that DI is not just a unilateral policy change. It also needs to be adopted. Mindsets have to be changed. People have to embrace it in every aspect for it to truly be implemented. So with all that in mind, of course, if we have that going with, good leadership support, good opportunities for development and career progression and equality of opportunities, then the people who are going in-house bring that thinking, those experiences and those mindsets with them. So that change kind of then continues in a sense. I think that's the beauty of the industry as well. We are an ecosystem with many different stakeholders. Yes, agencies and in-house are too easy way to split that ecosystem, but then there's so many other people within that as well, right? I mean, you have the talent development people, the recruiters, the leadership people, people who are doing the new business work. So everybody kind of comes in together to create this much bigger ecosystem. And I feel like everyone needs to be part of that conversation for it to be a true, honest conversation, firstly, as we're having today, which is why we also invited you over, but also then to take on these steps of change. Because if you do it, one person does it, it doesn't quite then have the same impact on the other levels. I mean, if I take the example of hiring, right? And that's one of a place where you can make that change pretty quickly, I would say. If the recruiters are still putting forward only people with certain profiles, right? Then the agencies themselves are already handicapped in that first level of looking at candidates from a diverse background, whether it's, as you said, race, whether it's education, whether it's experience. And similarly, if internally there's no kind of conversation between the internal HR and the leadership, in between, that how do we even tackle this way of fair hiring? How do we go to the point of fair pay? That doesn't translate down to the staff that you're bringing on board, but also then externally to the people that you're attracting. So I think everyone needs to come together and have that conversation in a more open, honest manner. And that's actually one of the reasons we are, kickstarting this diversity matters conversation, because we do want to have more of these conversations where we can talk beyond just one kind of a lens and one silo and look at it in a more holistic manner. So it's a long answer to your question, but yeah, those are my thoughts.
No, I totally agree with everything you've said. On the point you made about hiring, so about companies getting sort of applications from maybe one specific profile, I think that in a lot of cases, in a lot of markets in Asia, that could be the case. And I think that's where the onus is on the company to then go out and seek out some of these talents that, could not be applying for various reasons, whether it's, financial reasons or, things like access or things like, a lack of opportunity for whatever reason. And I think that that's also why companies need to, in that vein, allocate a budget to DEI courses, whether it's for hiring, whether it's for, inculcating culture within a company, providing mental health support, whatever it is.
Yep.
I think it's difficult to run a DEI program, and it's difficult to claim that your organization is truly diverse without actual investment, because then otherwise it just risks being a tick in the box, and you're sort of putting the blame back on the community. Well, no one's really applying. Well, I tried, but no, you have to do the work. And that's, you as an organization, you have the power, you have the influence, and you have to do the work. And that work sometimes takes, needs money. And you need all of these things to be able to make DEI work.
That's an excellent point. It actually takes me to my next question. I think we touched upon it already, but I think it's just good to take a step back, and it is about how can employees and employers work together to reinvent the workplace norm. So I think you touched upon one of those things, which is the efforts in really attracting that diversity of talent. And the next question also was about, who do you think should lead the change, right? You talked about, you get all the conversations and, coming into your inbox. So you have that, like I said, the unique perspective. What do you think are some of these ways in which we can start that ball rolling into in real sustainable ways and actual change, like you said, not a tick box?
Right. I mean, I guess for starters, I wouldn't say that I have all the solutions. Of course, I don't personally run the budget of the DEI program, but I guess for starters, hiring someone who can lead this course within your organization would be a good start. Someone who handles people and culture outside of HR. I think HR is a completely, not completely, but a separate function. And this people and culture representatives should be working alongside HR and leadership, and also alongside employees. I think that DEI should be leadership led. It should definitely be something that a leader should have these values, and it should trickle down to employees. But at the same time, I also think that it's important that employers are consistently asking their employees what they want, what they need. That's the only way to do it. Otherwise, I think you get a disconnect between what the employers think the employees want versus what the employees actually want. So yeah, I think for starters, that could be a good starting point.
That's actually some really good points that you brought on. And I think what one of the things that struck me was this separation, I guess you could say, of bringing in a person dedicated to this cause. And so do you think we need to have an objective person that comes in who doesn't sit within leadership, who doesn't sit within HR? Do you think that's what is also quite important?
100%. So whether or not it's within the remit of this person who deals with people and culture, or whether it's a third-party vendor, I think it's really important that employees feel safe in providing their feedback. And if that means that this process needs to be anonymized, then so be it. I think that a lot of the time, I mean, if someone's depressed or something and they want to express that to their manager or to the company, that's not going to be because of these taboos that we spoke about before, right? I don't think it's going to be, a lot of people might not feel comfortable, expressing these things. They might think that these things have consequences on their jobs or, chances of getting a promotion or things like that. So yeah, I think, an expert, whether it's a vendor or whether it's in-house, should be equipped with the tools to make sure that employees are communicating these things in a safe way and in an honest way, without any consequences at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I've shared about this before to you, and also actually I've been quite public about it, but I had those thoughts myself about how am I going to be perceived if I spoke up. And I mean, I'm in a position of leadership, and if I felt that, I can only imagine people who do not have that comfort of a hierarchy, would feel if they would want to speak up. So I totally agree with you on that. I actually wanted to go back to your point about the budget. And I mean, I know, again, speaking from a leadership perspective and as a person looking at budgets and stuff myself, first thing that always comes in mind whenever anybody brings in budget is, oh, how's that going to impact my bottom line? But what I want to touch upon also was that actually there are multiple studies that have been done that actually show that DEI and improving DEI in companies actually contributes to a healthier bottom line. So I just want to bring it up because I feel like a lot of times the conversation doesn't look at the benefits of DEI. People talk about how it's important to have it, but it almost seems a bit incomplete as to why we need to have it. It's beyond just happy people, but those happy people create better work. And I think you touched upon earlier about quality of work as well, right? When you have proper representation, the work that's being done, it's stronger and it's more relevant as well. So I mean, I just want to hear your thoughts on the benefits of having strong DEI, strong diversity, and just that representation in the communications industry.
No, I totally agree. So in the workplace itself, the benefits I think are many. One of them being, as you mentioned, business, it having an impact on the bottom line. I think there's enough evidence out there that shows that there is a connection between those two things. And then separately, also in the workplace, talent retention is also something that will, be affected because obviously, in this day and age, everyone wants to work in a healthy, progressive company that listens to them and has great policies. And so I think it's a no-brainer that it would obviously have an impact on talent and on business. So there's just benefits all the way around. I can't see how it would disadvantage a company in any way. Yeah. And then on the side of the clients, I guess, when it comes to the actual work they're doing for organizations, I think DEI in a workplace, especially in an industry like communications, the communications industry is so influential and powerful in shaping mindsets and cultures. And that's a huge responsibility on the industry's shoulders. And I think that if that's not approached with care and thought, there's a risk of that, responsibility being abused maybe, or not being tapped to its fullest potential. And that's where I think, the work really, really matters. Not just in creative, but also in a lot of the, consumer-facing messages or, there's so many avenues and channels that the communications industry can use for reasons to influence a targeted consumer set, and that responsibility should be taken very seriously.
I couldn't agree more with you. And I think it's also quite interesting because I think we have the 5th year of the anniversary of that whole implosion that happened with Bell Pottinger and some of the concerns that came out from there as well. I mean, that's another conversation altogether, but I think it's just timely that you talked about responsibility and how we are kind of almost gatekeepers of a lot of different things that we are supporting our clients to push forward to get change going on a wider scale within their respective industries as well. So actually, that brings me really nicely to the last part of our conversation. Taking a step back, one of the things is the committee, the ED&I committee for PRCA APAC, what we are trying to create is a charter for the industry across the region. And one of the reasons for this is actually going back to the very first question that we had said, was that Western concept issue. A lot of times people look to existing frameworks, existing best practices and templates that have been enacted, let's say in UK, in US or elsewhere. But it's proven time and again that, especially Asia Pacific is so diverse. We are so unique in our own ways. It doesn't make sense to just copy and paste something else that's not actually tailored and curated for the nuances, the sensitivities that we have here. Which is why we are trying to kind of come together, have these conversations, gather feedback, and to really hear different voices and perspectives to create a charter that we hope will be able to set a baseline for conversations in the industry, but also to kind of get some sort of a foundation that every agency kind of adopts and creates as a starting point for us to be better as an industry and be more accountable for our actions within the framework of ED&I. So with that, I think what we want to ask everybody who comes on this Diversity Matters Fire chat is to ask, what do you think is that one thing that should be in this charter? Now, of course, this is really open and I would love to hear your views on this.
Well, first of all, congratulations on working towards this charter. It sounds really exciting. I mean, I really love the work that you're doing with PRCA. One thing that I think should be captured in the charter is to eliminate pay gaps and introduce transparent pay tiers and structures. I think, equal pay, we talk about this a lot as being it's really the sort of bare minimum any organization should be implementing. But yet it's not really a standard practice. And the worst part is we don't really know which ones are, which ones aren't, because it's so shrouded and so elusive. We don't talk about, we're not transparent about these things. And I think unequal pay, whether it's among different genders or races or educational backgrounds, it's a very real issue in the industry, and not just in the industry, just across the corporate world, I think. And it exists partly because of a lack of a mandate. So I would love to see the charter, try and regulate some of these things. I know it's not always going to be easy, but yeah, I think that should be the bare minimum for any sort of equal and equitable industry.
I think you have hit us with a very high bar of change, but absolutely agree with you. I think the pay quality part is a huge, I would say it's almost an elephant in the room, going back to your point about how everyone knows it's there, but no one's talking about it in a very open and transparent manner. This is going to be published on LinkedIn, so I kind of welcome comments from the wider industry to please share your thoughts, and we will be happy to take them on and have further conversations about this as well. But I think that kind of brings us to the end of this chat and this first episode, which I think has been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much, Surekha. Any final thoughts that you would like to leave us with?
No, I think I touched on, I was just going to say, I guess, like, keep up the great work with PRCA. I think it's really great that you're introducing a charter. And all the young folks in the DEI committee, I think, are doing an excellent job. So I really do look forward to what's going to come up in the committee. And thanks. It's been such a pleasure chatting with you. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for gracing us with your presence and sharing your honest thoughts. That's exactly what we want to do across all the efforts that we're pushing forward. So once again, I welcome everyone who's watching this, and I hope you are watching this, to share with us your thoughts. Feel free to drop us emails, DMs, or even just comment on the conversation, and we'll be more than happy to pick up on some of the things that you bring up in the future episodes as well. So thank you for joining us as viewers, and we'll see you at the next episode.